Chapter 3.8, Part 5. Now remember, our Industrial Revolution is our backstory. It's going on all this time, and then 1914, World War I breaks out. There's all this stuff getting made and all these different ways of using materials and manufacturing and so on. It's a time of great social change. A lot of principalities and ancient European structures with kings and queens and so on is getting churned up and changed, and a lot of fighting, and that's what leads to World War One. There's a lot of money getting changing hands. Different countries have wealth one moment, and then there was a lot of turmoil with trade and so on. Art Nouveau comes about. Fin de siècle and Art Nouveau. So fin de siècle is this time frame. They used to call it the Roaring 90s. When you hear that term, they're not talking about 1990. They're talking about 1890. I wouldn't know what you'd call the 1990s. The heroin 90s? I don't know. But the 1890s, the Roaring 90s, is that time frame. Very lush, lots of beautiful imagery. And then Art Nouveau is going to get into decorative pattern and organic lines. So we're getting away from geometric building and things like that. We're looking at Toulouse-Lautrec's piece here, La Goulet at the Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge was a dance hall. And also this guy, I believe he was, I can't remember if he's a magician or it's in the other chapter. I'm not going to go back. But he was famous as well, and he had this very pointed nose. But look at his beautiful composition here. La Goulet is done in this faint sort of monochromatic bluish color. But we don't see him that dramatically. Mostly the focus is on our dancer here. And she's also very famous. Now, these are globes of light. Do you see here? Those are gas lights. And then everybody having a good time. So it's a really great composition when you think about those black silhouette figures in the background. Even the wood floor is depicted here, but very simple. Not a ton of line and a lot of detail going on, but you get the idea of what's going on. Very much that time of life. Now, this wouldn't be, high-class people would go, but they would go to kind of rough it. You know, it's sort of a dive bar, watching women dance in this way and showing their underpants. Okay, so Horta designs this house, and this becomes sort of the height of Art Nouveau, and the idea that the steel and glass could be made into organic shapes. So here we have steel structured buildings like the Eiffel Tower is happening. Lots of, buildings like the, I'm forgetting, but you're able to use things in a different way than you were before. So he can make this organic, strange tree-like structure imitating nature to hold up the staircase in the building, and look at this wrapping around, and these great curves everywhere. And then the wall here, and I don't know if this is an inlay, I don't recall what this material is in here. And then the lamps hanging, those were probably initially gas lamps, they're now electric. But it has this beautiful sort of almost like sea anemones coming off it, and then the floor tile is done tesserae mosaic with this gorgeous design. So everything's kind of rounded and soft and beautiful and detailed. This is our Belgian architect here. Steel and glass. It's an active space. Lots of things moving around. And then Tiffany lamp. Now, our previous example, so we're kind of looking at interior design / architecture, and then we're getting into a lamp. Okay, have we looked at a lamp previously in art history? Not really. A few things similar, but we're breaking this concept of art, fine art being painting, sculpture, and architecture. We're starting to break that down a little bit. We're thinking about perhaps some of the things that we live with in the world, objects being important as well with design and artistic detail. And also, we have some shifts in what's available with materials. This was made as an electric lamp. I didn't know that, and in part of our book, reading this, I understand this a little bit better. And I think we know a little bit more about Tiffany and Tiffany lamps because of the Antiques Roadshow. It seems to help with that. But we know this is an electric lamp, or it was made as an electric lamp, because there's no opening at the top to let the flames out, okay? Because there would need to be air and a safe place to let the heat come through. Although, as we all know, a lamp could get quite hot, and it is a better idea to actually have an opening. But the thinking of these early electric lamps, this is very early, was that this bronze stem here and the bronze sort of structure holding this piece together up here didn't need an opening. So that's how we know it was made to be an electric lamp. 2,000 pieces of glass here. Gorgeous wisteria design. So it looks like, really like flowers dangling here from vines up here. Manufactured, and later finding out that Carol Driscoll was our designer of wisteria, a woman, and Louis Comfort Tiffany, that was his name. And he created a lot of different designs, and then multitudes. There was a big factory and things were made. Now, there is a difference, though, with manufacturing and this sort of artisanal way of working, is the way I guess you could describe it. But the arts and crafts movement starts to happen. Not quite yet, but it's going to start to happen. And glass and bronze are important, and furniture is made as well with a lot of thought and care. Okay, last one we're going to look at for this chapter is Expressionism, 1905 to 1920. And some of it goes a little bit further, like almost all of these isms. The height of it is getting described here, but some people decided to keep doing this the rest of their life. So Expressionist artists are exploring ways of portraying emotions to their fullest intensity, and they're focused on inner states of feeling, okay? And exaggerating and emphasizing colors and shapes, and now that would be in regards to these feelings, these inner states. And often they did self-portraits because they know what they're feeling inside and how they want it to look on the canvas, the emotion and the color. So this one is Modersohn Becker, the self-portrait with a camellia, like a leaf here. So it's kind of almost like a precursor in a way. It kind of reminds me of a Frida Kahlo piece in that some plant life is kind of getting included in her necklace and stuff and her simple hairdo. But these colors in this shading has a lot to do with her mood. So she's focused on her expressing her mood and her inner states. She was one of the first women to make a nude self-portrait. Very interesting. The Germans mainly have this art form, the genre of Expressionism. Flattened forms, heavy outlines, solid geometry. So they're kind of looking at Gauguin. I'm not going to compare. And then Kandinsky, he covers a couple different genres, but he starts out with Expressionism and the idea that just these areas of color, and he's just writing, not writing down, but he's painting down all his emotions and just what's happening. And this has some cannons and explosions and so on, and some buildings and some different items happening in here. And that's his early paintings have objects in them, but over time he eliminates objects altogether and he gets into non-objective painting. The idea that all paint needs to be is a bunch of colors or lines that don't describe anything, that just show the inner states. So he's kind of the bridge from Expressionism to later when we get into abstract Expressionism, and it's just pure color. He's kind of one of those precursors. He also gets involved in the Bauhaus and color theory and line theory and everything else. So he's kind of one of those people who started developing the elements and principles of art. He's responsible for that to a degree. So he's a pioneer of non-objective art. He's showing turmoil of the time, but not in a specific way. and he's making work spontaneously. And that's what affects the spontaneousness as much as anything else, affects the abstract expressionists and the rest of the modernists. Ernst Ludwig Kirchner. This is Potsdamer Platz, busy area. But look at all these kind of explosive brushstrokes. Everything's kind of furry and fuzzy and sort of loud. And the color choices are usually dark and emotional, right? So he's expressing, this is the height of German Expressionism. Kandinsky's kind of doing a slightly different thing. But when we think of German Expressionism, we think of these big areas of usually kind of dark colors, and they're just kind of merging with one another. But there's still people and there's still events happening, but very intense color and intense emotional expression, basically expression of emotion. So it's kind of raw looking for sure and aggressive. Okie dokie.